Alrighty, so hello, my name is Andrew Bond. This is my final project for CSC for web development. This is my website that details the phases of a Magic the Gathering turn. Magic the Gathering is a deck building card game that is very similar to if like Dungeons and Dragons, the popular tabletop game, was a card game that was multiplayer and player versus player. So it's very much set in that same high fantasy setting. Um, Lots of mythical creatures and effects and crazy cool stuff like that. And it's been around for a long time, since the 80s. And a lot of cards have been printed that do a lot of things. And it's kind of become really, really overwhelming for new players. Um, so much to the point that people don't really understand or know how the basics of the game look anymore. So this website is mostly a short little, like, here's the very basics. Here's what a turn looks like, just so that you don't get lost on the gabagoo of what all the cards do and say, and you don't forget how the actual game itself plays. So this is the home page. I got the title at the top, Phases of Magic Gathering Turn, and then these are the 5 other pages that all have information on them. They're also available at the top of every page, homepage, so on and so forth. The first 4 are the actual phases of the turn. This bottom page, other effects, has some details about things that affect the other parts of these, or create some interesting interactions, or just other things that have to do with how the turn itself plays out that you might need to know when you're playing a game of Magic. So we'll start up here at the beginning phase. It details exactly how the beginning phase works, untap step, um, upkeep and draw. This is a brief explanation of how that section works. Believe me, this is brief when it comes to how this section works. And then included are links to some of the cards that affect certain things like this. So this is a card that affects the untap step. So if you click this link, it'll take you to a website called Scryfall that gives you the card in question, the information about it, some values if you're looking at interesting in buying this card. It also includes some other rulings for the card itself. For example, if you're curious, all your permanents untap because that's what the card says, and you don't get a choice about what you untap or not. Something specific to the game, but that's what this website is good for. And every time that I reference a card here, for example, this one is called Winter Orb, it takes you to the Scryfall link, keeps everything pretty consistent because this is a incredible resource for cards themselves if you're not sure what cards do or how they do or stuff like that. There's also some examples in here. So if you're not sure how exactly some interactions work, here's a step where these 2 things trigger at the same time. You can choose the exact order that things happen, and if you do it one way versus the other, it's more beneficial, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's basically how this works. At the bottom of each page is navigation to the sequential phases. Since the beginning phase is the beginning of the turn, you can return backwards and go to the last page, which is the other effect page. But for now, we'll keep going to main phase. The main phase details the main phase of the game. There's actually 2. There's one before and after combat, but they're the exact same in functionality. Some cards just care about pre-combat or post-combat, but that is explained down here. And again, all of these links are to cards and give more details about what each card does beyond just what the text on the card says, explaining why it's important, how this is different, so on and so forth. This is probably the most complex section of the page because it's just the most complex section. There's a lot you can do during main phase. So I've also included a link to a more detailed rules explanation about this section of the game, which gives more and more details about the exact specifics. And then you can navigate through this page, which is another incredible resource for new players. Other than that, the rest of these links are to cards, again, to the same website, Scryfall. Convenient. And then at the bottom, navigation to the next 2 pages. Combat, same thing. Details about it. Phases. This one has much more steps. More links to cards. If it'll load. There we go. Another example about an interaction that you're not sure about. And then a list of keywords. These are very common. You see them a lot, and they're so common to a point that they don't even explain what they do on the card anymore. So they sometimes get lost in all the clutter. So if you're not sure what indestructible means, here you go. This is the exact text that it means when the card says indestructible. These are the common ones that matter about combat. There are some more, but I haven't included them because most of the time those that are less common are detailed on the card. Again, navigation to the next pages. End step, again, same thing, a brief explanation, links to cards. This card is actually the one at the top. You can see the art is the same. This is the art. At the top of each page, I've included art about from a card that cares about this thing or this phase. So Seedborn Muse is right here. Main phase, Sanctum of All. I haven't included it on the page because the card itself is really complicated and has a lot of text on it, and it's not worth going through on something like this because it doesn't really matter to the turn, but it is something that triggers on main phase. So interesting little piece of information there. Here's a creature that has that deals with extra combat steps, which I'll get to later, and then end step, teleportation circle, and then the order of operations for the end step. This is important because it is one of the most confusing and not explained sections of the game. So this goes into detail about how the actual end of a game looks, and an example explaining why it's important that it goes this way. So this is the last page in terms of phases, and then this last page, other effects. Here's another creature that worries about something on this page. Some other interactions, for example, if the turn simply ends, if someone casts a spell that says end the turn, what do you do? Because again, that's never really explained. But this card details it really nicely in the reminder text. It tells you exactly what to do. Do this, this, this. Here's the order of operations. And basically says, go to the end of the turn immediately. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Some cards trigger these phases additional times throughout the turn. So this is a card that gives you an extra beginning phase. You get an untap step or an upkeep step. This card is really fun because not only is it printed upside down because the creators thought it would be funny, but it actually inverts the order of the turn and the order that players take their turn. So if it's a 3 or 4 player game, instead of going clockwise around the table, now you go counterclockwise around the table. And it's really annoying for the person who would go next. And again, some more rules, explanations, and some fun stuff. But yeah, the fact that this card is itself, this is the actual printing of the card. It is designed to be upside down because it's confusing. So kind of fun like that. And then disclaimer, there's a lot of rules. Things keep getting printed. Everything's new. This page is an official resource created by the developers of Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast. And if you have any questions about any cards, you can simply type it in. Get some if you're looking for cards that involve a certain thing, you can do all those things. This is a really good resource because there's a lot of cards, and sometimes they interact in weird ways, and that's really where you can find rulings on it. On top of all of this, there is a post out there. Somebody made a graphic of the rules iceberg. Basically, the top section is what we covered here, the phases of a turn. That's what's sticking out of the water. And then the iceberg goes so far down. You can't even really see it, but there's 13 layers, and it is huge. And we really barely only touched phases 1 and 2. But this guy, Max Makes Magic, did an incredible detailing about the significance of each layer and how the rulings changed and rules interactions, and it gets really, really interesting. And for the few people that actually care about the game more enough to go watch that, kudos to you. It's really an impressive playlist. But yeah, and then this links back to end step and beginning phase, so you can cycle through. So these pages basically just cycle through themselves. That's it for the whole website. I know there's not a form on here. Partially because I didn't realize that we needed one until I saw the final submission. And because there isn't really a spot that it fits here, like, hey, submit a form for this. Like, the really only thing I could think of would be to submit questions. And most of it has been covered really well. And if not, there are resources linked that can answer those questions for you. So I'm not really sure exactly how I would implement a form. The other thing that I would note is in my actual scripts or codes, All of the styling I have done in the HTML, because it was easier to do it as I was going through and then making sure things. So there are some repetitive things, but it made it easier in the long run as I was going through and coding this. So I don't really have my style sheet is completely empty. I made it and then didn't touch it. So those are the two things that I know I didn't do. But other than that, I'm really happy with the website. It turned out really nicely. It was a super fun project to work on, and I look forward to being able to do more stuff like this in the future, and do some more integration stuff with other resources and softwares, and learn more about how this all goes together. Because this was really fun to do, and yeah, I believe that's everything about it. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and